Tyrone. I just gotta get freaky for you because you love the hoes.
You are now.
What is poppin', everybody? What is good? Omnius Rome. You might know me as Rome. Welcome to my live stream for people who are chiming on. I really do appreciate everybody who's been supporting my content and everything like that. And people who are in to listen to this podcast, live stream. You listen to what I have to say. If you're rewatching this, highly do. You're very much appreciated. As you're coming on in, make sure you hit that like button for me. You know what I'm saying? With the algorithm, helps get this message out to a lot of other people. And I want to make it this religious or watching this live stream or who might be rewatching this, that this is not an attack on your religion and this is not a personal attack on you. All right. At live streaming, they will see, the title, they will see the thumbnail, and they will automatically think like this is their religion or attack what they believe in. And that is far from the truth. This is not that. This is not this type of party. This is actually to bring more awareness to a lot of the things that a lot of people do not question. They don't question their conceptions around God. They don't question the programming that they were given since birth. And so I want to be the person that can give you the one-on-one. I want to give you that real deal information, or that real deal awareness, when it concerns the basis of these type of topics, and I'm gonna do my best not to be on here for too long. I know I came on here a bit late. What's good, John? But excuse me. Yeah, I'm gonna do my best not to get on here, be on here for too long and everything like that. So we'll get on right live stream. So like I said, if you're coming like button, help out with the algorithm for this live stream when it does get put out there and everything like that. And the basis of watching this one video that I have came across, this woman who basically proclaims that God is the villain, right? And we're just going to build basis and build commentary around this video. And I want to show you one particular passage in the Bible, just from my personal perspective, on something that just really stood out with the personality of the person that many people call God. And something that's very interesting when you're dealing with this figure, that a lot of people call God, is that, somehow he is beyond human approach. Excuse me. Somehow he is beyond human approach. And I, for the life of me, do not understand. Excuse me. It got me on my phone. I, for the life of me, do not understand how a person like Yahweh could be beyond human approach, and yet he uses humanity, his endeavors. That doesn't even make sense. Somebody just said that God is a demiurge. Listen, they ain't ready for that. All right, we doing baby steps. We getting there. We gonna get there. But it's just very interesting that a lot of people, they don't like. If we are to conceptualize this God of the Bible, and if we give the template that we give to the God of the Bible to any other God, whether it's Zeus, Shiva, Brahma, Ogun, Obatala, we can obviously see that, if we are to look at other gods with this particular template that we are given with the Bible, we could see the flaws in these gods. We could see the flaws in their characteristics, and we would be very, very disgusted. We would not be attracted to these entities if the template that we are given with Yahweh is given to other gods. But because we've been programmed with seeing Yahweh as the true God and the only God that there is, right? And everybody else is false with a little g, but then you got Yahweh or God with the big G. it's just for them to play the okie doke on you, and it's more so of them playing like psychological games on you. You know, somebody said, "Isn't God just our consciousness?" Well, God is supreme consciousness. At least that's my personal definition. When we're dealing with God, God is personal, or rather, God is supreme consciousness that dwells within everyone and in everything. So we are direct extensions of supreme consciousness. We are direct extensions of God. So when I say that I am God, I kind of just said I am God two times over, because I used also I am, which is a very sacred principle when dealing with who you are and your identity. Because anything that you put after I am becomes your reality. So if you keep saying I am broke, you're gonna keep being broke. If you keep saying I can't find nobody, I can't find no man, I can't find no woman, you know, you're gonna keep reaping that. You're gonna keep manifesting that, because that is something that you have proclaimed to be your identity. So a lot of people just have to be very aware of using the Lord name in vain. And you are the Lord of hosts. You are the Lord of the earth. So do your best. Try your hardest to turn against the grain, to fight against the programming that has been instilled in you. You feel me? But I want to get into this video real quick. I'm trying to just wait until my screen kind of like at least on my phone, I'm just watching it on my phone just to see, you know, the quality of it and everything like that. But I'm gonna read some of y'all comments before we get into the video, right? So I'm sending Yahweh to hell. Y'all crazy. And for the people who are chiming on in, I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all hit that like button for me. Helps out with the algorithm and everything like that. So make sure you hit the like. Y'all crazy. I don't even know who this is. Oh, somebody talked about Sophia. Hold on. Let me scroll up a little bit. I thought I saw yeah, there it is. Sophia is the truth. The Demiurge is the enemy, which is the God of the Bible. And then he said Yahweh is the evil archon alien that wants to slave humanity. We'll get into that. I'm gonna when we talk on the basis on God being, because somebody had asked me if God was real, would I still worship him? And that kind of plays into the basis of this title, of this live stream. Is like, even if he was real, I still wouldn't worship him, because we're dealing with an entity that he wasn't even created to be God. He had deluded himself into believing that he could be God and created his own universe, But we'll get into that. We'll get into that later on into this live stream. So stay tuned. Y'all talking about Sophia, infinite collective consciousness. Sophia merges her light with life, on earth as Gaia, and evolves humans. That is a beautiful perspective. I am not against that whatsoever. But without further ado, I'm gonna try and share this video, and I'm gonna try and make sure that it doesn't look, glitchy and everything like that. But if it do look glitchy, you let me know. I'm just trying to give y'all the best quality possible to my ability. What makes us so sure of what we believe? As humans, we don't have the full answer. So wouldn't the truth be silence? Well, that's a perspective that I've also studied with Socrates, right? Because Socrates said that if there's anything that he does know, is that he knows nothing. And so a lot of people, I think, when we get to the basis of the perceptions and principles that we surround our life around, that is what was supposed to benefit us and what makes us, easier to be more in harmony with the universe. and process things in this world rather than for us to just not accept anything at all. If that makes any type of sense. So to answer your question, what makes us so sure of what we believe is to be true? You know what I'm saying? It is a very profound question, because what is truth? Like, what is your connection with the world? You know, that's another one that I subscribe to. The Tao that is spoken is not true Tao, or it can't be eternal. The Tao that can be spoken is not eternal. And that's the whole basis around my principle and my perception around um, omniism. Because when we're dealing with omniism, you're studying different aspects of life. You're dealing with different aspects of creation. You're dealing with different aspects of spirituality, and then you take the things that resonate with you to build out your own spiritual lifestyle, right? So that's a very profound question that a lot of people haven't really gotten to, because they always feel like they have to subscribe to something. They always feel like it has to be this way and not that way, and that's why, like, when Christians, they try to debate me because they feel like that I'm the little snarky atheist that they be having 4 to 5 hour debates in comment sections or that they see on YouTube. And I'm not. I'm the farthest from that. I'm the farthest from that, because I'm not an atheist, A. And B, I can look at how they see life, and I can agree with some aspects of it. I won't be easily combative of how they see life. I won't be easily combative of how they view Jesus Christ. I won't be easily combative about how they practice their religion. You know, the only way that I would get, particularly defensive, is when you try to proclaim that how I see life is wrong. And a picture holds 1,000 words. And how can you say that the picture that everybody can see and everybody is taken in a different way? How can you only claim that there is only one way to see this picture and everybody else sees picture differently? You see what I'm saying? Everybody has a different psyche, so everybody doesn't even take in information the same way. So who are you to say that Christianity and the Holy Bible and your Jesus is the only way for us to interpret God? It's not. Yeah, I learned the hard way not to give my time to Christians. I learned the hard way not to give them the time of day. It's a really is a waste of time. Truly. I get pissed off with Christians because obviously God has a wife and she's wisdom. Listen, that's one of the reasons why I don't even believe in their God, is because they took out the feminine essence. You can't try and advertise to me a God that doesn't even, respect his own wife. Yeah, y'all can keep that. Y'all can definitely keep that. Let's see. All right, let's get into the video. I'm gonna try and see what I can do here.
God is the villain in the story of Job. So many times Christians reference this story basically to tell me how important it is. However, I cannot understand how God comes across as anything but the villain in the story. So I reread the story just to make sure I wasn't remembering anything incorrectly. And oh my God, it's worse than I even remembered. So if you're not familiar, this is the story of Job, and I'm only going to go through literally the first chapter. Because honestly, I'd probably have to do a whole series because there's so much here. But the story of Job is basically this man who God views as blameless and perfect and wonderful. And I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see. So Job is living his life, loving God, and this happens. The angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came. So I know that Satan is maybe translated as like the accuser or something. So most Christians believe this is the devil, Satan, but maybe it's actually not. Regardless. So Satan comes and says, "Hey, God, I'm here."
And just to make a disclaimer, if people don't know this by now, the devil that is in the Bible is not the actual devil. And that might be a hard pill for people to swallow. But the devil that you have been programmed to believe in, the devil that you think is, going to take you to hell or punish you in hell, that's far from the truth. I mean, even the logic in it itself doesn't even make sense, because if we're going by this narrative that God and the devil are in heaven trying to seek who they can take off course, like, this is the narrative, this is what they have in place here. Mind you, this is only one setting or one narrative trying to bring out a point about somebody's life, right? This isn't really established as, if you are a Christian, right? If I was a Christian, like, this is not really an established setting for a relationship between God and the devil, right? Now, mind you, like I said, the devil isn't in the Bible. The devil is not a canon character to the Jewish mythology or to the Jewish spiritual system. So this whole fictional devil figure that you get is strictly from the church. It's strictly from Christianity. It's not real, just like hell isn't real. Hell is not a part of the Jewish traditions as well. Sheol and Hades are not the same thing. At the same time, the whole conception around hell, you kind of get influences from the Hellenistic era, from the Greeks and the Romans, concerning the underworld and stuff like that. So there you have that. But that's just something I wanted to emphasize on and just let you know before we go any further into this video.
And God is actually not. Regardless. So Satan comes and says, "Hey, God, I'm here. Hey, God, I'm here." And God wants to show off Job. And so he says, "Have you considered my servant Job? No one is like him. He's blameless and upright. A man fears God and shuns evil." And Satan basically is taunting God in response. And he says, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has?" Basically saying that, well, look, of course Job loves you. You give him all this good stuff. But verse 11 says, "Now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he surely will curse you to your face." And what is God's response? Not, "Get out of here, Satan. Don't be ridiculous. I can see the future. Let me tell you what would happen." No, God says, bet, basically. So that's what God does. God says, "Okay, Satan, you can take all these things from him." He loses all of his cattle, he loses all of his wealth, and then he loses his children. And so at the end of, this is all in the first chapter. At the end of the first chapter, this is what we see. So Job is understandably incredibly upset. And at the end of the chapter, it says, "In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing." So the takeaway is that God orchestrated this. God said, "Yeah, let's do this. This is a good idea." So clearly God is responsible for these things that are happening to Job. And Job's only crime was being faithful to God when he had good things. And what God is looking for is for Job to not blame God for the things that God did.
Basically,
like, I can't, it's so frustrating to read this because this is such a prime example of how Christianity refuses to hold God responsible for anything. Nothing is ever God's fault, even when it's so clear that, yeah, this is exactly God's responsibility. Why shouldn't Job charge God with wrongdoing?
it's a very good question. And Job, book of Job is the most one of the most horrendous stories to read on the basis of how God and the devil collab to destroy this man's life, right? And the amount of excuses that I hear from Christians on the basis of how God destroys this man's life is completely beyond me. And people will always use the book of Job to describe an example of when you're going through your toughest battles, your biggest trials and tribulations, and they will relate these stories to like people who have lost their children, people who have lost the biggest aspects of their life, who have been through the hardest of trials and tribulations, who have been homeless or whatever the case is, right? And so they will use the book of Job as an example of like God is putting you through this to get you through. He's trying to build you up to become stronger and better and to double your income, double your blessings. And it's very sickening. It's disgusting. The sound mess up a lot, or is that on my end? Is the sound messed up? Hold on. And so they will use the book of Job as an example of like God is trying to build you up to become stronger and better and to double you. Is the sound messed up? I have my phone on the other side. I know I might be a little the quality might be a little down. Hopefully that way, but hopefully my sound isn't going in and but thank you, James, for pointing that out though. Okay. Hopefully we stay in gears. I don't know if it's because like I'm sharing them right now, so that's probably why I might be doing that. Hopefully that's not the case. But I'm gonna read y'all comments in a second when I get done with my thought process. But yeah, like it's very disgusting and very horrendous when you read the story of Job and to hear Christians try to relate their trials and tribulations to this example of like God and the devil basically collaborating on destroying your life for nothing, like just to show how loyal can you be to me without you trying to blame me for the things that I have caused in your life. Like that's that doesn't make sense. That doesn't hold up, right? That's not like when I put my twos and twos together, like I'm not getting four. I'm getting some bullshit. Like there's no possible way for you to try and like you're gonna sit here and condone that the like God and the devil are in cahoots. Now, there's many different perspectives and many different narratives that I've heard around Job. So there isn't really just one way to interpret it. Now, some people will say that the true way to interpret it is the way that they read this story, and that might be true, but at the same time, we are of a different set of people, and your God should have known that we would be of many different sets of people, many different societies of people, that we would have, different ways of interpreting things. So if I read this with my intellect and my divine wisdom and knowledge, and I come to a conclusion that this was not a right act, this was not righteous at all, this was actually very unnecessary, I am within my right to interpret that story as such. We don't have to be of Greek culture to truly understand Zeus is an asshole. You see what I'm saying? We don't have to be of a certain culture to understand the certain gods and entities, because some people will feel like, oh, you have to be a Christian, you have to have the Holy Spirit, you have to have Jesus in your heart in order to understand the Bible, because as it says in the Bible, the natural man can't understand spiritual things. Like that doesn't hold up, you know. It doesn't take rocket scientists for you to truly understand the Bible. The average Christian doesn't even read their Bible. So what does that tell you? The average know their Bible, much less read their Bible. So but let's finish out this video though.
God did those things. Oh, I know this was a long one. If you made it all the way till the end, Ruby said.
Okay. I don't like dogs, but yeah, it's very interesting. That whole basis with the story of Job, I just can't stand it. Inanna, Ishtar, Lilith, Eve, Sophia, wisdom is recognized in Abrahamic religions. Excuse me. They are very much demonized in those religions. You cooking with that one. You are definitely cooking with that one, James. It's sickening. And we're gonna actually go through a story real quick in the book, in the Bible. I'm gonna show, put on my screen real quick, just so that we can. In this story here, excuse me, this story here let me know who I was dealing with. Right, this was one of those stories that I was reading when I was like 18, and I was like, what the hell am I dealing with, bro? I was literally reading this, and mind you, I've never heard this story out in no Bible study, no Sunday school, Sunday service, and this is Exodus chapter 32. I've never heard this in Sunday school, never heard this in Bible study. We didn't go over the basis of like deal with the base, like read this for yourself. Like, matter of fact, I'll put myself off screen just so that we can read this together. Okay. So we're gonna read it through, and then the places that basically are brought out, the places that kind of speak out to me, we're gonna go back to. All right. Well, let's go to the beginning. So Exodus chapter 32. And for the people who are chiming on there, you know what I'm saying, y'all the real OGs, make sure y'all hit the like button for me real quick. You know what I'm saying? We getting into this information, this deep dive for people, reconstructing their spiritual life and deconstructing from Christianity. So verse 1 says, now when the people saw that Moses was delayed in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come gods who will go before us. As for Moses, who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. So Aaron told them, take off the gold earrings that are on your wives, sons, and daughters, and bring them to me. Then all the people took off their gold earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from their hands, and with an engraving tool, he fashioned it into a molten calf. These, O Israel, are your gods, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. That's interesting. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before the calf and proclaimed, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. So the next day, they arose, offered burnt offerings, and presented peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and got indulged in revelry. So they were about to get down and get jiggy with it. They were about to have a party. Now, mind you, right? And we'll stop here. We'll just assess. We've been reading from verse 1 to verse 6. Basically, Moses been up there for a minute. Now, God knows this, right? Mind you, if God is all, as they proclaim this entity to be, He knows that these people cannot be without supervision for too long because they just came out of the land of Egypt. They just came out, like they babies. You know what I mean? Like they were in Egypt for 400 years. Of course, this is all they know. You know what I mean? This is all they know. Jesus did not exist. Anyways, this is all they know. So they're like, yo, Moses taking too long. We about to party. We need to get it on right now. So here, take our gold. We about to build up this calf and we about to party it down. It's about to go down. Right? Aaron kind of passive here. That's what I get from this chapter. Like Aaron is just very passive here. He's not really standing up to just there. Like, okay, I guess. So he builds the calf for them, and builds an altar calf. And then they get jiggy with it. They over there. They're gonna be partying. They're about to have the orgies. It's just about to go down. Let me get some water real quick. All right. And so then the next day, they planning for the party and everything like that. And then the Lord, verse 7, we continuing. The Lord said to Moses, "Go at once, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves." Pause. Go down at once, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. Now, Lord, you knew this was going to go down. You know these people. Why would you keep Moses? What exactly could y'all be doing up in the mountain for so long? And you know these people can't be unsupervised for too long, before they start going back to their old ways and corrupted themselves. Go down at once, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. But you knew this was going to happen. So why would you keep Moses up in the mountains for so long that they will start to wonder whether or not he's going to? That doesn't sound like a smart God to me. That's just me, though. That doesn't sound like a smart God to me. I'm just saying. Verse 8, how quickly they have turned aside from the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf, bowed down to it, and they have sacrificed to it. These, O Israel, are your gods whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt. Now, hold on. It seems to me that this God is of knowing everything that these people are doing. And now, he didn't do nothing about it. That doesn't make any sense. That's not. You mean to tell me you know what these people are capable of? You know how they are unsupervised, and you chose to keep them unsupervised for, in my opinion, just so that you can find a reason to punish them, right? Then you get to verse 9. He is fed up, right? He is done with them. I have seen these people, and they are indeed a stiff-necked people. Well, if you know they are a stiff-necked people, why would you keep Moses up in the mountains for so long? What are y'all playing? Like, really, what are you? what type of card games are y'all playing up in the mountains? Like, what year of 2K, could y'all possibly be playing up there in the mountains? Like, why would you keep us up in the mountains for so long to where the people will be unsupervised? You know they would. I mean, you're reading it. They have turned against me. They've created a molten calf. But you knew this would happen if they were unsupervised. You knew this was going to happen if they didn't have Moses within their midst or some leadership. Aaron ain't going to hold it down. He's too passive for that. You already see that. It doesn't seem like this God knows how to run his people. Hence, thing that has happened in their whole history, even in mythology that you see in the Bible. You get to verse 9. He says, leave alone, so that my anger may burn against them and consume them. Then I will make you a great nation. Hold up, bro. Hold up. These people merely out of Egypt for a good days, few weeks, maybe a good month, maybe a couple of months. Now you ready to just wipe it all out, and then you don't deal with Moses. That's very frightening, right? When I first read this, I'm like, what type of entity are we dealing with? Like what type of entity are we dealing with? You're willing to wipe out all the Israelites and then turn Moses, like he's really about to copy and paste the whole Noah blueprint. Does that make sense? That makes sense to me. You're going to consume, and mind you, and you can study this for yourself, there are essentially 2 million Israelites that left Egypt. Now we know that the Exodus didn't happen, it didn't historically happen. And there damn sure wasn't 2 million people exiting out of Egypt, all right, and crossing the sea. But this God is willing to kill all of them off. He is willing to break his covenant with their forefathers and then make a great nation out of Moses. Verse 11, Moses sought the favor of the Lord. Now, I personally think Moses was very stressed out after hearing this, right? Because he didn't just go through all this work just for his people to be, in ashes. So he says, Lord, why does your anger burn against your people whom you brought out with great power and mighty hand? Shall the Egyptians declare he brought them out with evil intent just to kill them in the mountains and from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger and relent from doing harm to your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, or Jacob, to whom you were by your very self when you declared, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land that I have promised, and it shall be their inheritance forever. And what happened? The Lord entered from can't say that word for my life. God damn. Calamity he had threatened to bring on people. So, in other words, the Lord changed his mind. The Lord had changed his mind. It took Moses to talk him out of assuming all of the Israelites that he knew were stiff-necked, that he knew would corrupt themselves if they didn't have supervision. And then he proclaims, look how quickly they have turned aside from the way that I commanded them. Negro, they were in Egypt for 400 years. They were in Egypt for 400 years. You can't expect these people to somehow supervise themselves on their own. Yes, they're going to go back to their ways. That's all they know. That's all they knew how to survive. This is supposed to be an all merciful, all powerful, all loving, all good God, so understanding, so personal. Man was so quick to kill them off. And I think there's a passage in the book of Numbers where he sicked poisonous snakes on them because they were starving. Like, what are we doing? What type of person are we dealing with? But it gets even worse because when you start reading farther on down, Moses eventually, like, he brings the Levites and he tells them to kill off their brother and their kinfolk. He hits on the Aaron first, right? He's like, "Yo, Aaron, like, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing? like you let these niggas get this far, you know?" But as we know, Aaron is very passive. Like he's really being a bitch. But he gathers all the Levites. He commands each of you men to bring a sword, to come back to the camp and slay your brother, your friend, and your neighbor. Is this necessary? Hell no. Hell no. Your brother, your friend, your neighbor. And guess how many they killed? 3,000. That's people. 3,000 people. 3,000. Killing their brothers, friends, neighbors. Afterwards, Moses said, "You have been ordained for the service of the Lord, since each man went against his son and his brother, so the Lord has bestowed a blessing on you this day." This is not a God worth worshiping. This is not a God worth worshiping. I'm sorry. Y'all can keep that above all things. That's not a God that I would like to spend any time with at all. Please keep that God away from me as far away as possible. It's not a God that I want to give my time of day to. So even if this demiurge was real, even if this God was real, keep it. Keep it, please. But let me read some of y'all comments. We go any further. Oh, y'all having little conversations in yourself. Me. I'm just skimming through y'all comments. Suppose having been a man teach Satan and mother or shows trying to find by the devil. The eschatology Jesus, the Antichrist. I say the same exact thing. They don't say Jesus from boy. The only scholars who say that are Christian fundamentalists who went to get a college degree to make their religion sound legit to easily manipulate people. Damn. Christ comes from Messiah, which means the anointed one. There was only one Christ. Why don't you attack Islam, read the Quran, and see how Allah encourages you first? This ain't that. This is not what this live stream or platform is for. All right. If you want to talk about the Quran and Islam, do so on your own channel. Respectfully. y'all having it up. When you said Jesus is Lord and call upon his name, well, here y'all go. So then why are you addressing this? You sound bitter, ready to accept hell rather than drop your self-righteous. I don't know what that had to do with anything I was reading. Unless that wasn't for me. But I don't know. It was meant for it was meant for us. What about Jesus? Israel 50, Isaiah 53. My bad. It definitely wasn't about Jesus. God can go to some alternative dimension without having a psyche materialized. You said it, not me. I agree. I wouldn't want to hang out with a guy like that either. I'm glad we on the same basis. We are not to question God's ways, right? And it's so interesting that this God is supposedly above or beyond human approach, and yet he acts so humanly, right? Which is, us moving on to the next, scene or the phase of this conversation. Like, it's just very interesting that this entity is so human-like. Now, Christians and religious people will often try to tell you that God is not like man, right? It tells you in the Bible that God is not a man that he should lie, and God is also not the author of confusion. But at the same time, he has a lot of human traits. He has a lot of human elements to him, and I can't help but wonder if our vessel, you know what I'm saying? And mind you, this is mythological, but if we are to entertain the story of Adam and Eve, that this whole basis of how our body is conditioned to work against us, I wonder if that is being in the likeness of Yahweh or being in the likeness of Demiurge, because of how, flawed the Demiurge is, that we constantly are in confliction with that which is already here, right? With the physical, the material. And so it took Christ consciousness, or it took a set of a being from a higher state of consciousness to show people the inner light or the divine spark within themselves that they have to align with to attain true gnosis or true consciousness or true enlightenment. And that's why Yahweh always despised humanity. That's why Yahweh always felt like his, divinity was in jeopardy. That's why he kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden, of Eden. Not because, oh, I didn't want them to have sin forever. He kicked them out because if they were to eat from the tree of life, they would live forever. You already know good and evil like me. I don't want you to live forever like me too. Because they would have got that extra charge up. They would have got that extra power up. And God don't need two extra entities, giving him hell, right? At least that's how I perceive the Adam and Eve story. But yeah, you're not supposed to question God. And people will say that the oldest trick in the world is for people, the oldest trick that's ever been pulled is to like believe in the devil and the devil don't exist. Or I know the saying. Hold on. I'm gonna say it right. I don't even feel right in just saying it like that. Y'all give me a second. There we go. The oldest trick that's ever been pulled is the devil. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. There we go. I would argue that the greatest trick that has ever been pulled on humanity is to create a God that is beyond human approach. I think that's the greatest trick ever done on humanity, because once you are somehow influenced by this concept of God, and you somehow inspire other people, and persuade other people to believe that you'll have some type of divine connection with this God that is beyond human approach, then if this entity wants you to do something that is a threat to other people, that is harmful to other people, who are you to question God? You see how dangerous that is? People will often tell you, well, God doesn't condone slavery. God doesn't condone, harming people. But yet it's all throughout the Old Testament. We don't have to try and play the basis of how better off or worse off bondage was to people. The fact of the matter is, Europeans understood and read what they were reading, and they just copied and pasted and 10x it. If having people in servitude or enslaved was so bad, I think your God would have at least somehow, some way, made that known. Just somehow, some way. That's all I'm saying. Just reading some of y'all comments, but I appreciate y'all coming on in here. If y'all are already chiming on in and y'all get into the conversation and everything at hand, make sure y'all hit that like button, right? Hit that like button so that we can get this live stream going on into the algorithm and everything like that. People do have relationships with God. He is not. People do have relationships with God. He's not beyond approach. Well, that is what we are taught in the church. That is what people will try to tell you, because his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. And who are you to try and understand and question God? Now, you can believe that, and I can respect those beliefs, right? But at the same time, people do not have a relationship with this entity. Why? Because this entity does not exist. And you might answer for God. You might trick yourself into believing that God is talking to you in some way, shape, or manner. You might have a relationship with the supreme essence, and you call that supreme essence Yahweh. And that's something, that's completely, okay, if that's what works for you. But this entity, Yahweh, personally and directly does not exist. But if you feel like you can have a personal relationship with him, by all means do so. What if it's us that are misunderstanding him, and he has good reasons for every move he makes? What if there's more than what meets the eye? If we are misunderstanding him, that is on him. If I'm reading the Bible and it's showing a lot of narcissism and a whole lot of genocide and a whole lot of things that would make a person, if you was to take these attributes and these traits into a human, and we was to look at that human as one of the most disgusting people in this world, I don't think that's much to misunderstand. We are often told to just go and read your Bible, go and talk to God. And when you study the book and you study the Bible, I don't think Yahweh is a person that I would ever like to meet if Yahweh was to become a person, right? Not something that I will even want to entertain. Okay, but y'all having a whole conversation with that. But yeah, like Just to conclude on my thoughts on that basis, like Yahweh is not somebody that I would deem to be somebody worthy of worship. I personally don't believe in any type of worship to any gods. I believe you should utilize the gods and not worship the gods. And like I said before, this is not an attack on your religion or how you believe or perceive things, but you have to come to an understanding of reassessing your life to then understand who you are. You know, you have to reassess your life to understand that you are an extension of God and your purpose is not to worship a God. I got some more people chiming on in. I appreciate y'all rocking with a real one. All right, make sure y'all hit that like button if y'all on YouTube. I don't even know how it's working on TikTok, but if y'all watching me on TikTok, and y'all not subscribed to me, make sure y'all subscribe to me. What are your thoughts on Genesis 6 verse 6? He shows why we don't understand. I am aware that Genesis 6 deals with Noah's Ark. The Lord was sorry that he ever made them and put them on earth. And it broke his heart. I didn't even know God had a heart. Well, Genesis 6 is definitely not something you would want to use to try and combat on this. I don't even know what to call it. Concept. I've been there. I went down to the route thinking I'm God. Then God saved me from that kind of thinking. But Jesus said the same thing. What are you talking about? It's not me thinking that I'm God. It's me knowing my world, knowing who I am in this world. But yeah, Genesis 6, that's not something that you want to. If anything, it shows more of the flaw in Yahweh, not that we misunderstand him. That our evil ways destroy his heart, but our evilness comes from him. That's what you're not understanding. Now, mind you, the Bible stories are myth, right? But if we were to take these Bible stories literal, this God is punishing his own people for the flaws that he instilled in them. We are made in his likeness, according to the Bible, right? If the Bible is true, and if the God of the Bible is true, we are made in his image and in his likeness. So if we mess up, that's on him. That is not on us. The demiurge is pure sadistic. Even there's no love in that entity. Hey, look, you said it, not me. Great stream. I appreciate that, James. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's like what my title says. Like if he was real, I still wouldn't give it the time of day. There's too much to see and to show, to show forth in the book that this is not an entity worth giving your time to. But even more so, when you understand your purpose in this world, you're not supposed to worship any gods. You utilize them. You utilize the energy within yourself to become the best aspect of yourself. You can have respects for other religions, and if you are somebody who is subscribed to a certain religion, that's cool and that's fine. It's a beautiful thing for you to have well-established values in life. Where things get dogmatic is when you try to convince somebody else that your perception of life is the only perception in life. And that's where things get dogmatic, and that's what you don't want to do at all. Wrong understanding. You have the choice to murder. I understand that, but if we're going by the basis of the Bible and this nature that has been instilled in us, all of these traits come from the Most High. All of these traits come from Yahweh. So I'm not saying that man is should not have accountability because, oh, God made me do it, the devil made me do it. But the trait and the the ability to do those things, that is God's fault. That is Yahweh's fault. Now, in actuality, in real life, yes, you have the choice to either do harm to somebody or to love somebody, and it's not somebody in the sky that is going to punish you in the here by and by, in the sweet by and by. But I hit over the 1 hour mark. I was supposed to be off at least by an hour. But I'm gonna hold it off for a couple of minutes so y'all can get y'all last comments in and everything like that. If y'all haven't liked the live stream, make sure y'all hit that live stream for me real quick. I will highly, very much appreciate that. That's not how that works. That is definitely how that works. He put Adam and Eve in a garden and didn't tell them about what would happen, or rather, he didn't give them the the well in depth knowledge and information, within themselves internally on what would happen if they were to eat from the forbidden fruit. It took a serpent for them to truly awaken, because he didn't even give them the full scope of what would happen after they were to eat from it, right? He told them they would surely die. The serpent's like, that's what that nigga told you? If you eat from this fruit, you're going to be dressed like him. And after they ate that fruit, God running. He running to his divine counsel. Because, there was more than just a Trinity. There was no Trinity in the Old Testament. That's another, I don't even think that's controversial. I think if you just study the Jewish text, there is no divine counsel. Or there's no Trinity. There is a divine counsel, and then stuff became more monotheistic when you start to study deeper into the text and stuff like that. But another time for another day. Man run into his divine counsel, run into his other peeps. I'm like, yo, yeah, the jig is up. They're like, what the fuck, God, bro? You're like, you just created this world in like what, a week? You just created this world in like a week, and now things are already messing up. It kind of reminds me of the show, The Good Place. Now, if y'all ever seen The Good Place on Netflix, it's a very good show, but it kind of plays a little hand on this as well. Like, no matter how many times they tried to reset the good place, the people that they were keeping into the good place always were somehow finding out that they were in a place of torment instead of in a place of goodness and prosperity. Anyways, great show. I highly recommend that. Eat from it, and yes, he told them what would happen. But that doesn't mean that they were capable of knowing right from wrong. They only knew right from wrong when they ate from the fruit. You can't punish somebody just because you told them not to do something, and yet they don't have the capability of knowing that. And then he allowed the snake into the garden. He set them up for failure. There is a Trinity in the Old Testament. There is no Trinity in the Old Testament. God makes it very clear that he is God and God alone. Well, you could say my understanding is flawed, but that's just facts for you. He did not trick them. They knew to listen to God. Well, you can make that assumption. The snake was the Messiah. Well, then now we get into more so the Gnostic perspective on that aspect, which that's a very interesting perspective. That's an interesting standpoint on that. John, that's beyond your understanding, bro. But that's very interesting with you saying like the snake was the Messiah, because I've studied up on that basis of Gnosticism, where There's a lot of serpentine, symbolism in the New Testament when you're dealing with Jesus. As a matter of fact, that's why Jesus tells his disciples to be wise as serpents and swift as doves, right? I've even read in some Gnostic books where they have these theories when they study into different texts when dealing with the Gnostic Jesus, that this whole initiation, there's a perception that one person came across, or that they created, that Jesus was like how he had a rod or a staff that he would walk around, but then the staff would turn into a serpent and it would bite like one of the initiators so that they can attain gnosis, which I think that's a very interesting concept to think about. But anywho, I could show you for sure there's a Trinity. Listen, the Jews can tell you. You don't have to prove anything to me. The Jews would tell you there is no Trinity in the Old Testament. You get a Trinity from the Roman Catholics. You get the Trinity from the Nicene Creed. You do not get the Trinity from the Jews. Why is that surface so you know their tricks? Okay. I mean, if that's what you want to believe, I'll leave you to that, you know. But it's almost 11 o'clock. I don't want to be on here for too long, but I do truly appreciate everybody who has came in here and decided to stick on by, and have developing really great conversations and everything like that. So I really do appreciate y'all for rocking with me and sticking in here with me and everything like that. Like I said before, if you been here and you're a real one and you rock with me, make sure you hit that like button for the live stream so that this can go out to many other different people. So yeah, I'm about to go find me a little snack or something. I'll pray for you. Please keep your prayers to yourself. I hate when people say that. Like, I don't know what your prayers are going to do. I really don't know. Like, on this platform, you are not a sinner. You are priceless. Okay? That is the message over here. So, we weren't born in sin. There's no Jesus coming back. You are your own redeemer. I don't know what your prayers, praying to somebody who isn't in the sweet by and by up in the sky, I don't know what that's going to do for you, respectfully. But you might be on the wrong platform. Incorrect, my guy. They believed Jesus was God before Nicaea. That wasn't the point of me. That wasn't the point of me mentioning Nicaea. Scripture confirms that it means the snakes are deceiving. That's why That's why John called the Pharisees vipers. That's not why John called the Pharisees vipers. But okay, you do you. Of course, I'm very aware of Christian doctrines around the basis of snakes. Snakes are not deceptive creatures. Snakes are actually very enlightening creatures. They are symbolism. They are a symbolism for your enlightenment. They also are a symbol for your kundalini and naga energy. So I don't look at snakes as deceptive, symbols. As a matter of fact, like Moses he built a bronze serpent in the desert to heal the people in the desert because, first of all, Yahweh was throwing a tantrum. I don't even know why would you sick poisonous snakes because they were starving. Like, you the one starving them, Negroy. Like, and Moses had built a bronze serpent to heal the people in the desert that were being bitten by these poisonous snakes. So no, I mean, and Jesus said that as Moses raised up the staff or the bronze, the serpent, so shall I also be raised up. Jesus comparing himself to a serpent, So I mean, but it is what it is, I know my stuff. But we can agree to disagree. You can have your perspectives and I can have my perspectives. Nobody has to truly be right or wrong, We just have different standpoints. And on that note, I wish to y'all a goodwill. All right, everybody have a wonderful evening, a wonderful rest of y'all night. I do not know when I'm going to be back live again, but I will be coming out with a deconstruction guide that, I will be posting tomorrow. All right. So I will be posting a deconstruction guide tomorrow. You do not want to miss that. All right. I'm gonna be coming out with some gems and I'm gonna be showcasing some very special stuff in there. So y'all have a good night. Check out some of my content. Maybe y'all can go through some of my content before I, as I leave on out and stuff like that. So